Hello, Bikini Bottom. Hey, how you doing? My name is Ash, and this is my channel, The Moody Reader. I also have a podcast. If you want to check that out, you can. I'll link it below, but we get a little racy there. I don't know, maybe. Hi, we're here today to do an October wrap-up, because this is very interesting for me because I thought I read like 2 books this month, when it turns out I read 10. And if you're wondering if I read or if I did like follow through on my Halloween readathon and I was gonna read The Shining, I was gonna read it in its entirety. If you're wondering if I did that, mind your business, for one. And also, no, I didn't. Oops. I don't like readathons. I've found out. Well, I've tried them in the past, like a lot. I don't tend to like readathons because it makes things unfun. So, yeah, didn't work. But I got like a good chunk of the way through. I got 230 pages in, but then I stopped reading because I wanted to play my piano. So I played my piano for 5 hours. I get very hyperfixated on certain things. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We're going to talk about the books I read this month, because I read, like I said, 10 books. And if you asked me what I read, number 1, what I read, number 2, what I thought of them, and number 3, what the books were about, could not tell you. Could not. So we're going to defer to my handy dandy bullet journal that I mostly just keep for like reading, tracking. I don't really even keep it for like dates and things, because like, look at this. I make a spread and then I don't use it. So, whoops. But I do use it for tracking my reading. I'm pretty good with this, although I have not updated it. So also a fail. I've only updated it till the 20th of last month, and I read a bunch in the last 11 days of October. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read this month was, it was Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I'm showing you my hand because I'm putting the graphic on the screen, because we're on a book buying ban, ladies and germs. We're not doing that this month, or for the rest of the year, honestly. So yeah, I read Oathbringer, and this is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. What can I say about this one that wouldn't be a spoiler? Nothing. So just know that I loved it. I gave it, I don't even know what I gave it. I gave it 4 stars. I think I gave it 4 stars because 1, it was long. 2, there wasn't enough Adolin in it. I love Adolin with my heart and soul. There was too much like love triangle-iness, and but the finale made up for it, so I love that. Yeah, it's just a lot of characters, a lot of it's just a lot of writing, but I do love it. So this is a book series about a shattered plains, and there's these people who were trying to fight for these like gem hearts, and there's like Shardblade, and I'm not explaining it well. If you want somebody who's actually well versed in Sanderson, this is not the channel for you. So just know that I liked it. Cool. All right, the second book that I read was I reread Warcross. Okay, I actually have this one. Warcross by Marie Lu. I first read this book when it came out, which was like, I think came out on my birthday one year for like 2018. Let's see when it was actually published, shall we? 2017. I got this one for my 21st birthday. Wow, long time ago. Yes, I read this one back then, gave it 5 stars. This one is about this virtual reality game that people play, and there's this bounty hunter. Her name is Amika Chen, and she is orphaned, and she is running out of money, and so she does these bounty hunts, and then when one of the bounty hunts doesn't come up as flush as she'd like it to, she ends up hacking into the game in the opening ceremony, essentially, and trying to steal a power-up, gets caught when she hacks in, but then the inventor, Hideo Tanaka, sees this and wants to employ her to basically, be an undercover spy for him. And the plot goes on from there, and she ends up like having to join a Warcross team to infiltrate and like save the day. I like this one a lot. I love this one at first. When I read it back in the day, give it 5 stars. Loved it. Back in the day, I really just read things for ships. So I loved the pairing. I loved the plot twist at the very end, and I was really excited to read the sequel. Don't read the sequel, it's terrible. But yeah, loved it again. It was still a good time, and yeah, it holds up however many years after. 5 years after? Yeah, still good. The next book that I read was The Alloy of Law. Okay, I'm going to introduce these next 3 books kind of in a row, even though I didn't read them in a row, but I read them, okay? So I read the first 3 books in the second era of the Mistborn series, which starts with The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This one is super hard to explain just because it is a continuation of the Mistborn trilogy, where you go and you had the original people, so like Vin and Kelsier and Elend and Sazed and Hammond, like the whole crew, and they had a trilogy and they went through it, and it was like a one and done, like set thing. And then Brandon Sanderson said, here you go, I know you wanted more of my work, and I really did. And he wrote The Alloy of Law, which happens 300 years after the end of the Hero of Ages. And this one is about Waxilium Ladrian, who is this lawman out in the roughs, and he is a lord, but he has like this whole house that he is supposed to govern over, but he really just wants to be out in the roughs and fighting and upholding the law. And then when something goes wrong, he ends up basically taking a sabbatical from that and goes back to the city, or Elendel, and he enters into a contract with this woman named Steris to become betrothed to her, so that they can kind of have a bargain there that befits both of them. So he gets her money and she gets to be married and produce an heir and keep her family line going. And then he ends up wanting to basically fight some more crimes. And so this is like kind of like a Wild West meets fantasy, Sherlock Holmes meets X-Men, like that's what the back says. Yeah, I loved this first book because it's so short and awesome. Brandon Sanderson writes huge books, and this one is like less than 400 pages. So if you can get through the first trilogy of the Mistborn series, then this one definitely pays off, because then you can just like coast through this one. And the plot is very surface level for this first book, and then when it goes on to Shadows of Self, which I also read, and the Bands of Mourning, those ones get a little bit deeper and deeper, and then the broader theological topics of conversation come up even more in those books. And so obviously I won't spoil anything. Just know that I love this first book, give it 5 stars. I gave Shadows of Self 5 stars as well. And then I gave Bands of Mourning, or The Bands of Mourning, 4 stars, because I need to level with you guys. I hate Steris. Hate her. I am a Waxilium and Marasi shipper, and I will just say that my dreams were crushed. So, yeah, don't love that. So the next book is coming out this month on the 15th. I think it's called The Lost Metal. So yeah, I will be reading that one, although, like I said, I'm on a book buying ban, so I don't know if I'll be able to get to it this month, because some of us need to keep an eye on our finances, okay? So yeah, Love this first book. Third book was but all right, after I read those three, I also read, oh my gosh, I read Landline. You guys. So, mood readers sometimes read books that it doesn't make sense. Like, I was not in the mood for romance really this month. I wasn't in the mood for contemporary. I've been reading a lot of fantasy and a lot of mystery thrillers. But then I just saw this, Landline by Rainbow Rowell. Well, first off, I had a road trip that I did this month, and I wanted to listen to something in the car. Turns out I didn't even listen to any of it because I had a passenger in my car, and she doesn't like listening to audiobooks, so, I mean, what can you do? But I saw this book was free on Libby, so I was like, hey, I'll just borrow it. And I was like, and I have this book, and I've read it before, so I knew I liked it. And so I read Landline, which is about this married couple, and the woman's name is Georgie, and she and her husband are kind of in like a weird like plateau state in their relationship. They've been married for some years, they have 2 kids, and they split up for Christmas, and because she is just so she's so tied to her job, and so she says, oh, I have this like really cool opportunity, and if I'm gonna take it, I have to stay here for Christmas, and you guys go to Omaha, Nebraska, to your family. And so they do, and then the next day she's calling her mom says, I heard the news that you guys are splitting up for Christmas. And she's like, no, we're not splitting up, we're just spending time away. And she's like, no, you're splitting up. And so then Georgie obviously would get a little bit like, oh my gosh, are we getting divorced? And so she goes back to her mom's house, and she also has a phone that doesn't really work. So she goes to her parents' house, and she gets on the landline and is like, hello, and then she gets transported back in time through this phone to, I want to say 18 years ago, to talk to her husband, who was 18 years younger. So it's kind of like a time-traveling phone. And this book I like because if you ever read Again But Better by Christine Riccio, or if you guys know her from YouTube, it's like Poland Bananas Books. She wrote a book that I feel like was kind of in this vibe with like the magical realism, but Again But Better was trash. So this one's actually good, and I don't know, I just like the marital conversations and the little bit of magical realism. And it's a very, like, if you want to read this book for a mood read, it's good to read it during Christmas time. I don't know why I read it now, I was just feeling it. So give it 5 stars again, or I think I gave it 4 stars. I don't know, it's like, 6.5 a dozen. It was good, I recommend it. The next book I read was Coraline. Again, a reread. I did a lot of rereading this month, and I'm not mad about it. We read Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I read this one in an afternoon because I was feeling like Coraline. This is the same book that I read when I was 6 or 7. It's about Coraline. She steps through her house into this magic doorway into this other house with these other parents, her other mother and her other father, and she finds a reality that's way better than her own, because she's just bored out of her mind and her normal life. And then chaos ensues. Yeah, I loved it. It was a 5-star again. It's just very classic, like, cautionary tale. So not much more to say about this. I really did enjoy like the illustrations in here as well. They were hella spooky, so I'm glad I read it before Halloween time was over. The next book that I read was The End of Her by Sherry Lapina. This one was an audiobook read, I think. I got it from the library as well. And I was on a Sherry Lapina kick because if you listen to my podcast, I did a thrift shop back when I wasn't on a book buying ban because I was being frivolous. So I went and I bought all these Sherry Lapinas for whatever reason. And so I went on a binge of reading her work. And I found some duds, but I also found some good ones. And one that I didn't happen to find there was The End of Her, but I found it from the audio library. So I read that one. That one's about this married couple who has these twin baby girls, and they have colic. They're just like crying excessively, and they the mother is feeling crazy, and the dad is suffering at work, and then all at once this woman comes into their life and is saying these crazy things and accusing this Stephanie's husband of basically murder. And so the plot ensues. I like this book because it had a good twist, even though I saw it coming. It had a very good twist towards the end. And the cliffhanger was really good. So I would suggest this book, The End of Her, over Someone We Know. I didn't really like that one. Or The Couple Next Door. Wasn't the biggest fan of that one. So I would definitely say this one is a better read from Sherry Lapina. And I think I gave it like 3.5 or 4 stars. It was good. It was good. The next book I read was The Murder of Roger Aykroyd by Agatha Christie. Classic mystery, queen of mystery, and Hercule Poirot. And this one is about Roger Aykroyd, who just knew too much. He knew that the woman he loved actually killed her husband, and so his love of his life got blackmailed, and so then she commits suicide, and then somebody sends Roger a letter and tells them that they know everything, and then before Roger can finish reading this letter, he gets murdered. And so that's where the plot keeps going. And then you have Hercule, who is he's kind of like retired, and he is found by his next door neighbor. Like he's just like planting turnips or something like that, planting some kind of vegetable. And then they persuade him into coming out of retirement to solve this mystery. I did not guess who done it, and I'm really upset. If you read this book, please tell me if you guessed it, because I could not figure it out. I could not. My guess was like super basic, and the reasoning for it was like, even though it was very on the nose, I was like, of course it'd be on the nose. Agatha wants me to think it's not that it is this, so that I think it's not, so that I won't guess it. But it was wrong. So tell me if you guessed it right. Give it 4 stars. I'm collecting Hercule Poirot, so I really do enjoy this one. So good soup. I don't know. Is that what the kids say? Does anyone still say that? And the last book that I read this month, not counting like a third of The Shining, is The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. And this one took me on a roller coaster, you guys. I'm still thinking about this one. This one is about this woman named Libby Jones, who was adopted as a baby and always knew that when she turned 25, she was going to receive this house. And so this is on her 21st birthday, on her 25th birthday, she receives a letter saying that, you've inherited this big house. And so she goes to see it, and she is spooked out because one of the things about her birth was that she was found in this house not far away from these 3 people dressed in black garb, and they were just in a row, and there was a suicide note saying that they had taken their lives and that they wanted someone to care for the baby. And so years later, you have her perspective, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her family. And you also have this perspective of this woman named Lucy, who's kind of on the run, and she's in France with her 2 kids, and they're kind of homeless, and she gets into some trouble. And then you also have the perspective of this man writing a letter that was based in like the late 80s. And lots of suspense in this one. I was eked out and like spooked, but in a way that I couldn't look away. Loved it. And actually, I tried to read this one prior, maybe a year or 2 beforehand, and I wasn't in the mood. Shocker, moody reader. So I put it down, picked it back up recently, and couldn't put it down. Read this one in like, I think a day, It's really good, and it ends off in a nice cliffhanger. But if you don't want the cliffhanger, you can also read the sequel, The Family Remains, I believe. I don't know if I will read that one, but I might. At this point, I'm curious. So if you read this one and you have read the sequel, let me know what you thought of it. So yeah, gave it 4 stars. Pretty good. So those are all the books that I read this month. I think that was a pretty good one, if I do say so myself. I read, let's see, the longest book that I read was 1,243 pages, I believe, and that award goes to Oathbringer. And then the shortest book I read was 176-ish pages, and that was Coraline. So it's a very like stark difference between like the longest and the shortest. And I think my favorite book that I read this month would probably be, like, I don't know, if we're talking about like writing wise, it would have to be The Alloy of Law. But if we're talking about like what kept me intrigued and like wanting to know more, that award has to go to The Family Upstairs. I think this is the book this is my favorite book I read this month. Weirdly enough, because I didn't give it 5 stars. My ratings make no sense. I need to do a video, you guys, on my rating style and system that makes no sense. So yeah, loved it. I love most of the books that I read this month, and now I have read 89 books this month. 89, I think. So if you don't know, I'm on a journey to read 100 books this year, and I'm killing it. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. Go ahead and subscribe if you want. If you don't want to, that's also fine. I will see you guys next time. Bye.